Hey, everybody. I am here today with Sam Daley-Harris. He is, so many things. He is an author, he is an activist, he's an advocate, but he also teaches people how to advocate. And in this era right now, this year, with what's going on, that's something that we really, really need. And so I am so pleased to introduce Sam to you guys and you guys to Sam. Sam, thank you for joining us.
It's great to be with you.
I was so excited looking at your book. That's the first thing I want to talk about. And I see it in the background. I don't know if you want to hold one up. It's
I got one
Reclaiming
right here.
Democracy. There you go. Reclaiming Our Democracy, Every Citizen's Guide to Transformational Advocacy. And of course, you guys know that is what we are all about here. So, Sam, well, let me also just say right up front, he is also the founder of a couple of different organizations which help teach people how to advocate for themselves again, in this era. And also, I believe, and he'll tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe his other organization does that for organizations to how they can
That's
get a
right.
champion representative over to Washington. So, Sam, first and foremost, what led you to writing this book? And tell us about your book.
Well, I will tell you about my book, but I think I'd like to start by telling you about how I got here in terms of even in this
Sure.
field.
Oh,
I
yes.
use a thing called the story of self that Marshall Gans, a Harvard professor, developed, and it basically asks what happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you
Hmm.
to this commitment. And then that got me to the book. So if I could just briefly, I have a
Absolutely.
bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music, and I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic Orchestra for 12
Wow.
years and taught high school music. And 45 years ago, I then founded the Anti-Poverty Lobby. Results, and a lot of times I'm asked, music, poverty lobby, what's the connection? And when I look back in my life, there's certain experiences that start pointing me in a different direction. The death of a friend around high school graduation
I'm
in
sorry.
1964 and the assassination of U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy around college graduation in 1968 got me to asking the questions of purpose. Why am I here? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? 9 years later, it's now 1977. I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger put on by the Hunger Project. And I go to this event thinking, well, hunger's inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. Well, I'm thinking it's inevitable because there must be no solutions. Again, what do I know? Because if there were solutions, somebody would have done something by now.
Yep.
But I go to this event, and it's obvious right away there's no mystery to growing food, clean water, basic health, literacy. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature. People will just never get around to doing the things that can be done. But there's one human nature I have some control over, my own, and my
Hmm.
questions. Why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. This is the end of the story. In 1978 and 1979, I spoke to 7,000 high school students on
Wow.
ending world hunger, classroom by classroom. And before I went into the first classroom, I read some statements from Jimmy Carter's Commission on World Hunger calling for the political will
Hmm.
to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? I don't want to know if you wrote him. I don't want to know if you met him, just the name.
How many
Out of
knew?
7,000 asked, 200, fewer than 3%, could answer correctly. And more than 6,800, over 97%, could not tell me the name of their member of Congress. And results grew out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington on the other. And that's my story of self. And I ask viewers and listeners to think about theirs. What happened in your life? What decisions did you make that got you to your commitment uh, in whatever work that you're up to.
Hmm.
So that gets me to results. And then it gets to your question about the book, kind of where the book came from. And it turned out that we were in this massive trial and error exercise in what would be developing a thing called transformational advocacy,
Okay.
not transactional, sign the
Right.
petition, transaction complete, but where you're trained, encouraged, and succeed at doing things you never thought you could do, like meet with a member of Congress and bring them on board to your issue. And when you do that, you see yourself differently. That's the
Yes.
transformation.
It's very
And so,
empowering.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so the book actually it was originally released 32 years ago, titled "Reclaiming Our Democracy: Healing the Break Between People and Government." And the most recent edition has a new subtitle, "Reclaiming Our Democracy: Every Citizen's Guide to Transformational Advocacy." And the point is, I think so few Americans know of that possibility. You know, they know of the mouse click, they know of the protests, really important. We can talk more about that. But they don't know that there's a deeper form of advocacy. And so um, I rewrote and re released the book to try and get the word out more widely
Hmm.
about transformational advocacy and the difference that each of us can make. Sorry for the length of that story,
No,
but
no, that's really interesting. You sort of went from being Mr. Holland to Mr. Smith goes to Washington
I
or helps
guess,
others go to Washington. It's
yeah,
pretty cool.
yes.
So if you could, and I hate to put you on the spot, but in just one or two sentences, or like what's the 30-second elevator explanation of what is transformational advocacy,
Well, again, oversimplified, not transactional, sign the
right?
petition, transaction complete, but it's when you're in an organization, we can describe how to get there, where you're trained and encouraged to do things that you never thought you could do, like have a letter to the editor published on an issue you care about. And when you
Hmm.
do these things, mind blown, that you never thought you could do, that's the transformation in transformational
Got
advocacy.
it. Got it.
It's
So
the
you might
kind of
be in,
advocacy where you're changed, not just the issue you're working on.
you might be interested to know that I mentioned before we started that I had founded it. It's called We the People Defend. It was specifically founded for, I know a lot of people who are not necessarily shut-ins, but who have medical issues and they can't really go out in public. And they were really feeling like, here we are trapped at home for our whatever reason. And so I founded that organization to give people a way to still take action. And
Yeah.
so, so these are people who are making calls directly to their representatives
Yep.
and other representatives
Yeah.
because they represent we the people, not just their people.
Yeah.
And what I have heard back and we have heard back is exactly that, like, wow, I never made a call before and I was nervous, but
Yeah.
they were nice and they
Yeah.
listened. And
Yeah.
yeah, but you're doing this on a much greater level and in
Yeah.
person and across the country,
Well,
right?
let me tell a little quick story. It's
Yeah.
longer, but the short version is that one of the people in the book is Maxine Thomas. I always say she's a remarkable woman, but we're all remarkable if we get the right training. She has a lived experience of poverty, and she joins a group that works together with these weekly modules on working your way out of poverty. And her group realizes they have a story to tell and they join results. And she eventually goes to Washington. I'll tell that in a moment. But she said to me, I had a heart for service, but I was clueless about advocacy, especially political advocacy. So, anyway, she gets training. She goes to DC, and she has this full day of first ever meetings with her senators and representatives in Washington from Indiana. And she said at the end of the day, I was euphoric. I was on this high and felt I was part of something revolutionary. So
That's
from I was
awesome.
clueless to I was euphoric. That is transformational advocacy.
That's a
And
beautiful
yeah,
story.
yeah, yeah,
That's really representative.
yeah.
Well, so that actually brings up, so I want to know, and I want people to know what they will find in your book. But because you mentioned, Maxine, and results, I also want you to talk about results. And is it possible to do that in the same breath?
Sure. And so Results is this anti-poverty lobby that I founded 45 years ago out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and lack of basic information on who represent us in Washington on the other. But I'm going to give you a quick example of a results victory
Okay.
over 41 years, and then the entrance of Donald Trump, and finally, a glimmer of hope. So, Results started lobbying on child survival in 1984 and in globally. And in early 1980s, UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund,
I remember.
right, was reporting that 40,000 children around the world were dying every day from largely preventable malnutrition and disease, things like measles, coupled with malnutrition. And Results volunteers have lobbied every year from 85, 86, 95, 96, 2005, 2006. Over the 41 years, the global child death rate has fallen by 66%, saving some 10 million young lives a
Wow.
year. Then enter Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, and that global child death decline is quite likely to go back up again. But here's the glimmer of hope. Um, just one example. Results volunteers have been doing this for decades. So there's a letter. Two Republicans and two Democrats got a grand total of 128 members of the House to sign one letter asking for robust funding for maternal and child health funding globally. Maternal and child health in 2025, that ended October 31st, was 915 million. President Trump, in his budget for for 2026, which started November 1st, cut it by 92% to 85 million. The House Appropriations Committee, not the Democrats, the House Appropriations Committee funded the full $915 million, not President Trump's 85 million or 92% cut. So that's the glimmer of hope. It needs to go to the Senate next and then make its way into a continuing resolution that the president will sign, and then the money has to be spent. But
Right.
the whole notion that, like, quite honestly, I was waiting for transformational advocacy to show up in this first year of Donald Trump's second term, kind of thing. And the fact that 128 signed this letter, and the fact that the House rejected his 92% cut
That's
and funded it at the full 915 million maternal and child health globally. So that's an example of not it changes me. I mean, I went from I was clueless, I was euphoric, but how it changes an issue, though that one is still in progress. I mean,
but
it's not done yet.
also how it might change. Presumably, those members of the House heard from people,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's a trickle up effect.
Yes, exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so first, I want to say for people listening, you can find Sam's results organization at what a great domain, results.org. So people can sign up there, right, and get
Yes.
involved.
Uh, at that website on the homepage, there's a button, Learn More.
Okay.
And to learn more, you can let me know if you'd like to join the Civic Courage mailing list, occasional mailings, if you'd like me to connect you with an organization that works to deliver transformational advocacy, and if you know a speaking possibility, your club, your book group, your church, your whatever, you can let me know that too there.
And I think also your book website, reclaimingourdemocracy.com, also has a link for people to sign up to get your, is it a newsletter?
Well, that's the
And
same one. The
yeah,
learn more is the link to the sign up sheet.
got it,
That's what
got
that
it.
is.
And then at
Yeah.
results.org, there's, you can
Well, then you
volunteer.
can connect directly with the organization
So
results.
there's a couple of different ways. All
Yeah.
paths lead to transformational advocacy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
what about this civiccourage.org?
Right. Well, civic courage is less for volunteers and it's more the work that I do to coach nonprofits in this kind of transformational advocacy. Let me tell a quick story.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I I got an email last in 2024 by a pastor who was the minister, it still is, Minister for Environmental Justice at the
Okay.
United Church of Christ. And he wrote in an email that I'm reading your book and it's the best book I ever read for my job, which
Wow.
is to empower parishioners. And
Right,
so I
right.
started coaching him and several others in January of 2025, and they've started their first 11 chapters all over the United States. But this is the part I want to tell you about. They're working on, this is back to this glimpse of making a difference deeper in the guts of the government, the Environmental Protection Agency.
Oh,
2026 started November 1st, 2026. President Trump called for a 55% cut to the Environmental Protection Agency. The House Appropriations Committee called for a 23% cut. The Senate called for a 5% cut. Well, there's a big difference between 55 and 5. And so what this group, it's called the United Church of Christ Climate Hope Affiliates, they're working, frankly, for the more modest 5% cut to the Environmental Protection Agency. Now, most people don't really know. Well, you can't, do you have any say in that? Well, what they're mostly doing is because they're so small, they're only 11 chapters in 2025. Uh, they're writing letters to the editor. And their first chapter started in
okay.
March 2025, and they have a goal of 50 letters to the editor urging readers to contact their members of Congress to basically approve the 5% cut to the Environmental Protection Agency.
You know
So,
that the letters to the editor bit is brilliant. It's a brilliant, I think most people think of, when they think of as an individual, I want to get involved and start advocating for this issue or that issue. They think about faxing, well, not faxing anymore so much, emailing their
yeah,
representative. And like you said, transactional, you give them
yep,
an email, send it, and you're done.
yep.
Um, and doing letters to the editor, that wouldn't have even have occurred to me. And it's really pretty brilliant.
Yeah, a lot of times when I'm doing a talk and a Q&A, someone said, letters to the editor. The peepers are shrinking and da, 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 da. And it doesn't matter anymore. And what I always say is, well, think about, let's say you're a member of Congress from Colorado and you're in Washington. Where do you look for the pulse of your community? Of course, you look at letters you get or meetings you have, but when you want to check back to the community, do you check in with the hottest blogger in the district? Well, you might, but you're still going to check the newspaper. And what I always tell people, when your letter is published, don't like click your heels and take a nap. Make sure your friends know about it. Post it on social media. The organization knows. And then send it to the aide in Washington and call them to make sure they saw the letter to the editor, in this case, on the Environmental Protection Agency, for example. So I want to tell you this one other story because I was talking with the head of organizing for a very large organization. Everyone listening and watching would know the name of
Mhm.
this organization. And the head
But
of
you're not going to tell
organizing,
us.
no, no, no. And the head of organizing said to me, well, we won't let our volunteers write letters to the editor or op-eds because they'll get it wrong and misrepresent the organization, protecting their brand. was more important than empowering their members. So one of the groups I coached starting in 2007 was the Citizens Climate Lobby. And the
Hmm.
year before COVID, their volunteers had 4,300 letters, op-eds, and editorials published. One group was saying they'll get it wrong, and Citizens Climate Lobby was saying, well, what do we have to do to help them get it right?
I was just going to say, that's like, they'll get it wrong is such the wrong response. It's
Yeah,
rather like, how about we
well,
hold a meeting and tell
yeah.
people how to
Well,
do it?
here's the deal. But see, this gets to people say, well, if transformational advocacy is so good, why isn't there more of it? And my answer is always it's the fear of staff, of making big asks of volunteers. Like if you're a volunteer and I'm standing in front of the room and there are 20 in the room and
Yep.
uh, uh, I want to start a new chapter. And one of the asks is we're going to start with a 4-part new group training every
Hmm.
week for 4 weeks, 90 minutes each. Well, that's a big ask. It's easy for a staffer, especially a new one, to go, I can't ask that. I'll water it down or slough over it or whatever. No, actually, it's in the 4-part new group training where the group gets connected to itself, to the organization, and to the issue. And so, yeah, there's some slippery slopes that leave us with transactional all too often.
Yeah, especially in larger organizations, I can see that.
Yeah, yeah,
That makes a lot of sense. So, in terms of organizations, then, with your civiccourage.org, because I know that there are people out there who are involved with organizations and might find this information useful. So, can
yeah.
you just sort of tell us a little bit about how you work with organizations?
Right. Yeah. And so, in simple terms, I work with them to create a structure of support from finding a host to building with that host an inviting team to with the inviting team a launch workshop. And then let's say there are 25 in the room and 10 say I'm in, those 10 going to the 4-part new group training. And then there's a monthly webinar with guest speakers, Q&A. And so essentially it's like when volunteers raise their hand and say, I'm in what? What did the volunteers promise to the organization? And what did the organization promise to the volunteers? And is it powerful? Basically, is the question. So it's in that ballpark that civic courage it works right now. If I could tell this other story,
Sure.
it's really about uh, the powerlessness and cynicism that people feel.
So
I was
much.
interviewed in 2024 on an NPR program. It goes to 350 stations. So it's quite nationwide. So I was quite moved by how vulnerable the host was in question number two. This is question number two. He said, the passive nature to our politics today, you can feel beat down by it. I mean, this is my career and I feel beat down by it. I don't participate the same way others do because I'm a political journalist, but I do have to pay attention. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. I mean, I know you know that. What am I feeling? What's the way out of that? I was so blown away that he was so like vulnerable
Yeah, yeah.
on national radio.
And
The
what did
first
you
thing
say?
I said, well, Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweickart said, we aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're the crew.
Oh, I
Well,
love that.
are
I
we?
love that.
And if we're crew, how does crew operate? And the second thing I said was futurist and activist Alex Steffen said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. Well, yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are. I'm not going to do anything about it. Why would I if nothing I do makes a difference? And just that's what I said. What I didn't say, because I met this person later, there's a guy from Stanford, Jamil Zaki, who wrote a book titled Hope for Cynics, The Surprising Science of Human Goodness. I love that title. And
Yeah.
in the book, he says basically, if you're cynical, it's like you're playing poker and you fold your hand before the game even starts. And I say, well, if you're a
Like you give
civic
up.
cynic,
Yeah.
it's like you're a civic cynic. You fold your hand before the Congress is even sworn in, before the first bill is even introduced. So I really love to share that story because I think we need to realize we aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're the crew.
And we aren't passengers in government, in our democracy.
Yes,
We
exactly.
are the crew.
Exactly.
And what what you were describing that the NPR host was saying is exactly what most people have been feeling in terms of just being beaten down, being hopeless, being
Yep.
cynical. In part, that's what this administration wants them to feel.
Yeah.
They want them to feel confused and
Yeah.
hopeless and beat down.
Yes.
And in addition, social media, the messaging on social media, so much of which
Yeah.
is hyperbole at
Yeah.
best and flat out false at
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah.
And which brings me to, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned, posting your letter to the editor on social media. What are some other ways that you might suggest for people to transformationally use social media?
Well, again, I I would I wouldn't say get off social media. I would say get in person is my message. Like when I'm talking to a group and I'm trying to explain to them what to look for in whether an organization is working to deliver transformational advocacy, I have them look for three things. And this is like the in lieu of or instead of social media. One, recruitment and community building. The organization brings new people in not just to build an e-blast list, but to form them into local chapters so you're not working alone, like alone on social media.
Right.
And that's the recruitment. The community building would also include a monthly whole of organization webinar with guest speakers and Q&A and inspiration. So recruitment and community building. Training is number two. How do you get the meeting with the elected official? How do you plan for the meeting? What do you ask for in the meeting? How do you write a letter to the editor? Two, training. Three, breakthroughs. The organization encourages you to move out of your comfort zone and
Mm-hmm.
do things you thought you couldn't do, which is what builds confidence. And in the book, there's this drawing, a small circle labeled your comfort zone, and next to it is a much larger circle labeled where the magic happens. And so you're looking for an organization that will not kick you out, but encourage you out of your comfort zone over to where the magic happens. So recruitment and community building, training, and breakthroughs.
You
And
know,
so
where
you
that magic
find
happens,
what?
I say where the magic happens also, it occurs to me, is the sphere of influence that one person has that they don't realize that they have,
Right,
right?
right, right.
That is the misery to euphoria also,
Yes,
to
y-
realize one
yes.
person really can make a difference, and then a whole bunch of one persons united can
Yeah.
move the world.
Yeah. So I'm not saying get off of social media. I am saying you're not going to get recruitment and community building and
Right,
forming local chapters. You're not going to get training. I mean, somewhere you could, but normally you're not going to get training and you're not being going to be encouraged to have breakthroughs. So I would kind of like lure people away from social media rather than do social media better or something.
right. No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Now, is a lot of this in the book?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
There's a how-to section, 4 chapters, like how to work with elected officials, how to work with the media, that kind of thing. And still, I'm the Mr. Encourager of don't do it alone. Find others to work with.
I was
Don't be
just
alone.
going to say that
Yeah,
so this is a book that is for individuals, but then they can, spread the word
yeah,
and excite other people to
yeah,
sort of join
yeah,
them And that's awesome. And again, that's Reclaiming Our Democracy. Is it on Amazon?
Yes, reclaimingourdemocracy.com. And when you go there, you can find Amazon and independent booksellers, and you can also find the sign up sheet.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
And so that's reclaimingourdemocracy.com
that's right.
and results.org and civiccourage.org. And this is Sam Daley-Harris. And Sam, I would like to give you the last word. What would you like to leave our audience with besides
Well,
buy
I'm going to
your
share a
book?
quote. Yeah, I'm going to share. It's not my wisdom, somebody else's.
Okay.
It's the longer part of the shorter quote that I gave earlier from Alex Steffen. He said, optimism is a political act. Those who benefit from the status quo are perfectly happy with a large population of people who believe nothing will get any better.
Oh,
In fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. What's really radical is being willing to look right at the magnitude and difficulty of the problems we face and still insist we can solve those problems. End of quote.
that is wonderful. Well, Sam, I really am so grateful to you coming here and speaking to us. And I really encourage everyone to pick up his book. You will learn a lot. You will be encouraged. And Sam, will you come back sometime?
I'd love to.
That would be awesome. All right. Well, thank you. And everybody, this is Ann P. Mitchell, attorney at law, founder of We the People Defend, and author at Notes from the Front. Thank you for joining us.